Welcome, everybody, to the HR Roundtable. Thank you so much for joining us today for Proactive HR Practical Strategies to Elevate Your Impact. I know that this is an area that all of us are always trying to do more of. I want to be more strategic. I want to have more time to be more strategic. I think that's the key there. If there is a way we could figure out how to better arrange our days, kind of arrange everything else that's going on so that we could have the time to be more proactive and be more strategic in how we do things. Well, I'm PJ Trudeau with the HR Roundtable. I'm very excited today to have with us Lauren Winans, who is here to really tell us how to do it and has some great tips for us to be able to walk away with. So let me turn it over to you now, Lauren, and tell us all the great things that we need to learn how to do as we move forward.
Awesome. Thank you, PJ. Thanks everyone for having me today. I'm really excited. I know a few of you who are on the phone, so I'm excited to see your names there. So hopefully today's conversation will be helpful in a variety of ways. I thought I'd introduce myself first. There we go. I started an HR consulting business about 5 years ago after being in corporate HR roles, leadership roles for approximately 18, 20 years. And I primarily, my background is in total rewards, but it was on HR leadership teams at organizations like American Eagle Outfitters, General Nutrition Centers, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. And through all of that, I got pretty dangerous in all areas of HR. So felt really confident about starting my own business. And for the past 5 years, I've been really excited with the variety of clients that we've had, and the ability for me to kind of spread my wings and operate in different areas of HR. I'm very fortunate to have had the success that we've had over the last 5 years. And I've also had a lot of ability to interact with media outlets to provide insights for the HR industry, as well as just, leadership and business development as well. So I'm really excited to be here with you. The name of my practice is Next Level Benefits. I am not going to go through this with you right now. I just wanted to put it in there so that if you do reference the slides at a later date, there's more information about who we are and what we do. And today's objective, though, that we're going to focus on is we're going to learn how, emphasis on how, we're going to learn how to expand our mindset, our bandwidth, and our professional network to more effectively deploy our HR strategy. So I'm sure you're a lot like me. And then anytime I go into these sessions, I'm always wondering, okay, what is this going to look like for the next hour? What have I signed myself up for? So what will our next hour here look like? So I'm going to attempt to answer a lot of the questions that are naturally going to pop into your mind. So number one is like, well, what does it mean to be strategic? But how do I do that? And what can I start doing ASAP right away? And then we're going to do a breakout session where we'll break up into smaller groups to have, a conversation and some dialogue around an exercise that we'll partake in. And then we'll come back together, and then you might be thinking, well, can you just show me what you're talking about? Can you show me how it's done? And then we'll go into how do I know the difference between a priority project and a back burner project? So this is going to kind of go back to the question that you answered when you first registered about, what's your most pressing back burner project? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to break out again and work through another exercise. And then we're going to come back together and we're going to talk about what's next. And what's next is going to look a little bit different for everyone, but hopefully we'll be in a place where I've answered some of these questions for you today and left you with some ideas of how to make changes to your daily, weekly, and monthly schedule to be more effective strategically. So let's just dive into what does it mean to be strategic in HR. So these are the normal stuff that we hear all the time, right? So, aligning our strategies with business objectives, being proactive with talent management, partnering with our business leaders, using data, being effective when it comes to rolling out changes to the organization. These are things that we hear all the time, right? But we don't necessarily hear a lot of how to do it. We hear what we should be doing. This is more of the what, right? This is the what. but how do I do this? How do I implement some of these strategic initiatives, some of these solving for these larger goals and commitments to the organization? So I want to focus on the how today. So the how is really, what I believe is harmonizing four essential components. And I've kind of articulated and thought of those in four different buckets, so to speak. So I think of it as tools, how do I manage my time? Practices, how do I get out of my own way? Bench strength, how do I rely on a group that I curate, around me, whether that be internal or external partners? And initiatives, how do I prioritize projects that matter? So we're going to talk about each one of these over the course of the next handful of slides. And our breakout sessions are really going to be about putting some of these things into practice. And I just going to call out the practices image. I just loved the run Forest run thing, like when I was thinking about getting out of your own way. So I don't know, that was a toss up of whether or not I was going to keep that in there, and I decided to. So hopefully you're humoring me and think that's funny. All right, moving on here. So we're going to work on the how, like I said, and when you work on the how, that is essentially going to help you to tackle the what. So the way that you need to be kind of thinking is really with a strategic mindset. And the only way you can really foster that is to think about all of these four components kind of working in tandem. When they're all working, in synergy, it really is helpful to kind of build that mindset and be able to approach your daily work with that mindset. Having a strategic mindset does not mean that you aren't going to be executing tasks and getting into the weeds and getting the work done that needs to get done every day. It just means that that is like the price for entry of your job, of your daily work. You've got to do it, and you're going to get it done. But when you lead with a strategic mindset, you're also looking for opportunities all along the way to contribute to your overall strategic goals that you are going to ultimately want to set for yourself each year. So when we think about strategic mindset, we think about leveraging tools to manage our time, diligently relying on practices that enhance our work, creating a talent circle around us to flex our bandwidth, and prioritize projects that free up time and improve efficiency. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these, in depth, but the goal is to really kind of hone in on all four aspects of these components to really kind of drive to a strategic mindset. So tools. So let's talk about how we manage our time. Tools to incorporate into our day. You may already have a lot of these deployed. So, and maybe some of them aren't really feasible for you within your organization for whatever reason, but maybe there's something that is listed here that may not be applicable to you, but can help you think creatively about how to incorporate some version of it into your day. So think about how much time you go back and forth with people to organize time on your calendar. You may want to look into a calendar scheduler. They're free. There's a lot of free options out there. I threw a couple of examples for each one of these tools. These are the ones I use. It does not mean that you need to use them. It just means that I have found success with them, and it could be really helpful for you as well. So thinking about just small ways to free up time in your day that we can then repurpose that time for more strategic actions is really going to be like the first step in trying to drive you towards that strategic mindset. So when we think about calendar schedulers like Calendly, it really kind of eliminates that need for the back and forth emails. It can also allow you to set those boundaries around your schedule. Here's when I'm available. I think internally, a lot of people can see your calendar through whatever email platform is being used. But think of the calendar scheduler for maybe some of your external partners. Maybe it's your vendor partners, your consultants or brokers that you might be working with. It might be for other business partners that interact with your organization. It can really eliminate a lot of time that's been wasted. Task and project management tools. So Asana is one that I really like. A lot of these tools have a lot of bells and whistles, but you don't have to use them all. You can use what works for you. The thing I like about Asana, for example, is I can get out of my planner and start putting things into a dashboard so that I can get reminders at different points of the day, as well as I can start my day with a list of items that I know I need to get through. And that list can travel with me wherever I go. So it really does help me to stay on top of the things I have to get done in a particular day, done in a particular week, and be able to easily prioritize what I need done. It also allows me to easily check off the things that I have accomplished and revisit those accomplishments whenever I might need to remember, oh, when did I finish, or when did I wrap up that document, or when did I put together that presentation? Sometimes you might need to reference that, and your planner isn't always the greatest place to keep all of those things. So it can just be very helpful to organize your day, know what you want to tackle, and be able to easily kind of move things from one day to another. Think of it like, your existing, Outlook calendar on steroids, because you can move things around. You can tag people who might also be in Asana, or any other project management tool. They're all relatively the same, to be honest with you. It just helps you to organize, track, and manage your work more effectively. A meeting note taker. I love these because it's really hard to stay present in every meeting that I'm a part of. I don't know about you, but I often find myself drifting off. I'm sure some of you right now might even be drifting off, checking a few emails, maybe even making a few notes of things you just remembered you forgot to do, but you've got to get done today because it's Friday. So meeting note takers are really cool. Always check with your IT professionals to confirm that you're able to use these types of tools within your network. But a meeting note taker like Fathom, for example, it's basically, it attends the meeting, it listens to what's happening, and it summarizes the information for you. And then post meeting, you can get an email that kind of outlines everything that was discussed in summary form, as well as any action items that you've committed to during that meeting, or that the participants have committed to during that meeting. So it makes it a lot easier to stay on top of, what you've agreed to, what work you need to add to your Asana calendar, and also kind of helps you to, keep others honest and ensure that they get you what you need. Process documentation, I really like Scribe, but there's a lot of great ones out there. Some of the things that were entered into the question about some of your back burner projects, what was your most pressing back burner project? We had a handful of people bring up SOP creation, documenting processes, so that if you're out on vacation, someone can actually do the job and you don't have to be worried about what you're going to come back to. Or maybe even documenting processes, because, what happens if something happens and you end up moving on to another organization, or maybe you need to take an extended period of time off. Whatever the case may be, you can't be the only person who knows how to do certain activities or your job within an organization. And so you can really simplify process documentation by using tools that are out there, which will make you really kind of get the benefit and value of being out of the office. You don't have to worry that something isn't going to get done, because you've created, a very detailed list, a very detailed document for someone who might be backing you up. And a text summarizer, I like these. I think ChatGPT does a version of this too, but the example I shared was Grammarly. If you have a really large document or several pages of something that you need to read, but you don't really have a lot of time, you can actually, summarize that pretty quickly into some of these tools that make it much easier for you to get the gist of what you need to know when you're looking at, whether it be a document, an article, sometimes even a very long worded email. You can just pop that into a tool like Grammarly and get the summary that you need, so that it can kind of condenses everything down to key points, makes it easier to understand. Some of us are speed readers, some of us aren't. And sometimes, the amount of time it takes to read through the various things we need to get through on a daily basis can actually eat up more time than you think it does. So that is another, tool that I think you can incorporate into your day to save time. So, whether or not you use all of these or just, one or two of them, I think there are ways to just naturally, create some additional minutes in your day that can ultimately add up and allow you to kind of shift your focus into some more strategic thinking. Bear with me here. I've only got one more slide before we're going to do a breakout session. I know I'm doing a lot of talking, but I do think that some of these things will be helpful to lay foundation prior to our breakout session, which is going to be right after this slide. So when I talk about getting out of your own way and focusing on practices, there are certain practices that I would recommend that you incorporate into your week. So we just talked about tools that you can incorporate into your day. So each day, those tools can be a part of your day. Now we're going to talk about practices that you can incorporate into your week. So one of my favorites, and I'm going to show you an example of this in a few slides, is to chunk and block your time. You may have heard of this before. You may do a version of this. If you haven't heard of it, that's okay. Basically, what this means is you schedule and dedicate specific blocks of time to specific tasks and activities without being interrupted. So, for example, from 9 to 10, I am going to participate, on this webcast. I am going to shut down my email. I'm going to close my email. I'm going to put my phone on silent, and I'm going to focus on this particular item from this time to this time. Same can be said for emails, right? So I am guilty of having my email open all day long. It is nothing but a distraction for me. So I try to incorporate into my week setting blocks of time on my calendar where that's my email time, so that the other times of my day when I'm participating in meetings, when I'm setting aside time to work on a particular project, when I'm setting aside time to think, which is my time to be strategic, I'm not focused on emails, because I know that there's an hour in the morning and there's an hour and a half in the afternoon. Those are my email times, and everything else in between is focused on doing and being more present in the moment that I'm in. So we're going to look at an example of chunking and blocking your time in a handful of slides here. So we'll revisit that topic. That is one of my number ones that I think is really helpful. It allows you to take control back of your calendar, because a lot of people have control of our calendar. If we let them, they'll continue to take control of our calendar. So if you can take back some control in any way, shape, or form, and note that I know that you can't always control your calendar and your schedule when it comes to your boss, executives, certain employees within the organization. I totally get that. But generally speaking, we can take back our power with our calendar and set the boundaries we need to set if we think about chunk and block. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Prioritize. So I think all of us think we probably do a really good job of this. I think, though, that there are times where we might prioritize items that we like to do versus prioritizing items that we need to do. And so I know I'm guilty of this. There are certain things I like to do, and I try to do those first in my day. And then by the end of the day, the things that I need to do that I don't really like to do, I don't have enough time to do it, so it gets pushed to the next day. So when I think of prioritizing, there's an example that I had heard in a session that I attended years ago around how to think about prioritizing. So think of yourself as a doctor, and you need to establish the importance and the urgency of the actions that are necessary to preserve the welfare of the patient. So you're the doctor, here's the patient being your employees and or your organization. What do I need to do today or this week? What do I need to do this week in order of importance and urgency to keep this patient alive? So think of your work in those, frame it up that way. And I do think that it will help you to kind of get out of your head of, well, but I like to work in spreadsheets. But is the spreadsheet going to save the patient this week? I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it will if it's compensation review time. It might save the patient this week. But it might not save the patient if there's other things that you're kind of putting off doing. So if you kind of think of that analogy when you're thinking about how do I prioritize my week, that might help you really think through what truly is the priority versus what can wait. Delegate. We hear this a lot, especially as leaders. Don't take on things that are not something that you can truly provide value in, and don't take on things that are going to be a waste of your time. So I would just keep that in your mind. We're going to talk a little bit more about creating a solid group of bench strength around us. And we'll talk more about delegating when we dive into that. But that is something that as you're thinking about your week ahead, what are some things that are on your list that you can delegate to a team member, or that you can delegate to one of your external partners, like one of your vendors, or your broker, or another consultant that you might be using. Or maybe it's, maybe there's an opportunity for another member of the organization who's not in HR, but is looking for a stretch goal opportunity. Maybe it's bringing them into the mix and asking them to handle a few things for you so that you save time and they get the benefit of some career development. Automating administrative tasks, it's, I know you know what I mean as it relates to that, but I think there are some of us who get so mired in the weeds that we don't always remember that some of these manual processes that we do, we could be automating them. We could be automating the report that we want to run every Tuesday. We could have it just delivered to our inbox. There's also some, other examples of what that might look like. But I do think that when you think about your week ahead, I always like to think about, okay, what do I have to get done that's real tasky, that's real administrative? And, I'm going to do that this week. But is that something that can be automated? And should I be adding that to my list of strategic priorities that I want to accomplish later this month? Maybe it is generating a report. I go into, for example, I go into our accounting software all the time to run reporting, to check on invoices and to, check on different, project hours and whatnot. And, if I automated that report, had it delivered, every single week at a particular time, that would save me the time of remembering and needing to go in there and run the report. And so, it's little stuff, but all those little things add up. So when you approach your week, what am I going to do this week that could be automated? And let me add that to a list of the tasks that over the course of the next few months, I'm going to carve out time to automate so that I save time in my week every week. These last two items are going to be what we're going to focus on during our breakout session. So when I'm thinking about practices to incorporate into my week, what I don't often do that I've recently just started to doing is brainstorming. So that really is about collaboration. It's carving out time to collaborate with others, and it could be a group that you choose that's within an HR team, within, HR business partner, grouping, or maybe it's, a cross-functional group of players. It's definitely time that I don't think we always give ourselves. And I like to think of it as my thinking time. So if I'm brainstorming with others, more minds are better than one. Lots of different ideas are better than just one idea. And I think that if you go into every week, maybe carving out some time either with your team or with your direct business partners, maybe with your leadership, and just kind of, no pre-work or preparation required. It's just time held on the calendar to get together, to talk about issues, maybe some creative solutions to some ideas or problems that you might be having. Maybe it's even sharing, hey, I just attended a really great webinar last week where we learned, how to effectively, identify the right HRIS partner. Can I spend 5 minutes sharing with you, some of the things I learned from that? Maybe this is something that we could continue to brainstorm on so that by next year, we can maybe, create a goal around going to look for a new HRIS platform. So it's just basically holding time in your week to think on your own or primarily with others. And then lastly here, creating working teams. This is something that took me a long time to get used to because I early in my career, I didn't really like to work in teams because I always felt like I was the only one doing the work. I was the one who's coming up with all the ideas. Somehow I was always being the one writing everything down. And it just, I don't know. I always kind of felt like, oh, I'm better alone. I can do all this stuff. But what I learned over time throughout my career was, like I said before, more heads are better than one when it comes to coming up with ideas and solutions. And a lot of times too, different issues that you're trying to solve for, different problems or even enhancements that you're trying to create for your organization, it really is a team approach. It's different players who have different perspectives about how something can work or should work. And so bringing together a group of individuals, whether that's internal or external or both, to collaborate once you've identified a priority and a goal that you're marching towards, can really be powerful, and it really can help to divide the work up so that you can conquer the goal and you can conquer the problem. And so what we're going to do in our brainstorming sessions today, both of them, is we are going to put these practices into action right away. So we are going to have our own brainstorming session and create our own working teams in order to participate in that brainstorming session. So if you remember, when you registered, we asked the question, what is your most pressing back burner project? So you can even start there. So what our plan is, we're gonna break you out into groups. And what you're going to do is one team member in that group is going to volunteer to be the guinea pig here. And they're going to share either an idea, a problem, a back burner project. They're going to share something that they are struggling with, working on, getting started on. And the rest of the group, the rest of the working team, is going to help brainstorm with this person the ideas and solutions that they can kind of bring up to handle this specific problem or project. So think of it as just, okay, here's my issue, and fire off, all these different ideas and ways that you can help that person to move that project forward or solve that issue. So we are going to break out here in probably do about 8 minutes, PJ, if that works, and we'll go ahead and break you out into the breakout rooms.
Everybody should have received an invite. All right, Lauren, everybody should be back. You're on mute.
Sorry, it automatically put me on mute. I do know how to use my computer. So let me just make sure I am sharing here. There we go. So there was a group who unfortunately had me in their breakout session. And unfortunately, we cut off Rich. Rich, I'm so sorry. I'm sure you had a wonderful idea. So hopefully in the second breakout session, you and anyone else who didn't get a chance to contribute will have an opportunity to contribute. But I hope you enjoyed that. And we're going to do a second one too. So, hopefully you can be the next person in the hot seat. But, the intention here is to kind of walk you through an example and like have you feel what that practice can look like and feel like. And the HR Roundtable is a great opportunity for you to kind of exercise this. We're all together. We're like-minded HR professionals. Wouldn't it be great If you don't already have some connections within the group, to make some connections and maybe even spend, 30 minutes of your, every other week getting together and just, hey, here's what I'm working on. Anyone got any great ideas? Have you done this before? And I'm sure that PJ even, may already kind of offer opportunities like this. But this can be a really great way to tap into ideas that are not your own, and even ideas from other organizations that they've seen work. So it can be really powerful to kind of build your tribe, so to speak, and be able to brainstorm and feel like you're in a safe environment to kind of be vulnerable and say, I really don't know which way I want to proceed with this. Here's what I'm thinking, but I'm kind of looking for, alternative viewpoints. So we're going to do another one later, but to keep things moving, since we have about 20 minutes left, I wanted to dive into bench strength, which is the third component of kind of moving towards a strategic mindset. So relying on your second string. I would encourage you to remember that your second string, your bench strength, isn't just the head count that's sitting in your department. So think of it beyond that. Think of the existing vendors that you have. Is there tasks or responsibilities that are within their purview that they either should be doing, can be doing, or maybe even are contractually obligated to do for you? Vendor management, there's a lot of facets to vendor management. That could probably be its own conversation, hour-long conversation. But vendor management is also is really the crux of it, is ensuring that the vendor is performing for you and doing what it is that they say that they're going to do. And a lot of times there are things that if they can push things off to you, they will. If they can get away with it, they will. Don't get me wrong, I love my vendor partners, but sometimes they don't recognize that, it might take them 2 seconds to do something that I'm spending 20 minutes, every day doing. And so, kind of leveraging your existing vendors is a really great way to enhance your bench strength. And what I would recommend is once a month, maybe think through, okay, what are some things that I did this month that maybe, my HRIS platform, my account manager there could do for me? Or, what is something that our broker could do for me now that, we're leading up to open enrollment? What could they be doing for me? So just think about that monthly. Okay, is there something that they're not doing that they should be doing? And is there something I can get off my plate? Consultants and fractional support. Because I don't want this to be a sales pitch, I will not spend too much time on this because this is what we do. But honestly, I do think that if you can identify some go-to resources that that you can rely on when you need additional support for a special project, or even just for a really busy time of year, that could really kind of lighten the load a little bit. So we always recommend to people who are starting to think about that, who may not have those partners in place, is to really kind of think through, what type of budget dollars could we maybe set aside to have someone on the ready in case we need them throughout the year. So give that some thought as you're approaching your next fiscal year and your budget planning. It's a great way just to have a safety net. When things hit the fan, sometimes you just need some extra help to bring in. You don't have a lot of time to get them up and running, but if you're bringing in some seasoned HR professionals to help you, can be really helpful to get your project over the line. Self-service tools, utilize self-service to its maximum capability. I know there's a lot of employees who want their hand held. There's a lot of people who are going to reach out to you directly and want something for you to do specifically for them. But the more that people can rely, your employees can rely on self-service, the more time frees up in your day. That doesn't mean that you don't necessarily, get involved in some of these circumstances. But what I'm kind of thinking of from a monthly perspective is just think about, have I gotten, like over the course of the last month, I feel like I've gotten, the same question 5 times. Maybe there's something that I could implement within our portal or our dashboard or our intranet, or maybe there is some FAQs I can put out there. Just think about your version of self-service with your teams, and is there something that I could implement next month that would free up some time that I just wasted this month? Employees itching for stretch goals. I kind of alluded to this earlier. One of our clients, and I love this idea, one of our clients actually meets with leadership once a month. There's a core group of leaders. They meet with them once a month for 30 minutes, and they essentially are talking about their high potential employees. Those employees that are naturally going to progress throughout their career within the organization, but really need exposure to different things within the organization to get that well-rounded skill set. And so, those employees that have been identified to kind of work outside of their normal scope of roles and responsibilities, they're hungry for special projects. And so our client, when they meet with the leadership once a month, is they've identified probably about 10 or 12 employees within their organization that they tap into anytime a special project arises. So one of their recent special projects was an acquisition, and they had a couple of these employees jump in on the project team, which really helped the HR team to navigate the whole process with extra hands. So it can be a really great way to create career development opportunities within the organization, as well as helping you save some time. Interns, paid or unpaid. If you don't already have a partnership with a local college or university, you might want to look into doing something like that. There's a lot of great recent college grads or current college students who are looking for exposure in a variety of different industries, and those that are, maybe even pursuing an HR degree or some sort of organizational development degree can be really powerful resources for you. Yeah, you might have to handhold a little bit and help get them onboarded on the upfront, but it's really worth its weight in gold when you've got people taking over some of those tasks that take a lot of the time in your day. And I put on here additional headcount. It is last for a reason, because I do think that a lot of us forget about these other options when we think about building out our bench. And so additional headcount, I also put it last too, because we all know in HR, we're the last to get the headcount that we need, right? So while I think it's really important to fight for it when you need it, I think that you also just have to maybe assess that on a monthly basis. Okay, where are we? Are we close to burnout? Because you don't want to be, struggling to get additional headcount and lobbying for it when you need it most. That's like the scariest time to do it. So I would, on a monthly basis, be kind of checking in and determining whether or not you feel you need that within your own team. But also you can help others within the organization and other functions as well, kind of be thinking of that throughout the year as opposed to when it's too late. So I've created a checklist for you. I'm not going to go through each one of these because, quite frankly, we've already gone through them over the last, 3 components. These are some of the things that we talked about. So in the first bucket, we've got, what's my checklist for managing my time on the daily? What are my daily strategies? The middle box, what are ways that I can get out of my own way? So once a week, what are some things I should be doing once a week? And then lastly, how do I rely on my second string? What are some things I should be doing once a month? This will be in the material for you to reference. PJ is going to send this document out at the conclusion of the session so that you can leverage this in any way you choose. I also have an example in here of the chunk and block scheduling that I was talking about earlier. So think of, so I just randomly created this. I don't know when your lunch break is or when you start your day, but think of this as a true example, and maybe you can model your schedule off of this a little bit. Really what I'm illustrating here is the times that you have blocked on your calendar to get stuff done. So if it's in white, it's open for meetings and for anything else that might be needed, but everything else is blocked on your calendar for you to execute tasks, respond to emails, execute on these daily strategies, these weekly strategies, these monthly strategies we talked about, and then also carving out time for strategic project work. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a few slides here, but this is just a great example for you to reference when you reflect back on today's conversation or revisit the slides. You could maybe put something like this in place in your own schedule to carve out the time that you need to be more strategic. These are our back burner projects. So I took all of your answers that you responded when you registered, of things that you are on the back burner, that you just, you don't have the time for right now, or you don't have the bandwidth, or maybe you don't know where to start. The most common was learning and development. And the second most common was compensation analysis. And then, as you can see, you know how these work. As the font gets smaller, less and less people, mention those. But, I do think it's just helpful to kind of see, some of these things are true priorities, and somehow they've ended up on the back burner. Some of them are back burner things, they don't need to be done immediately. But what I thought might be helpful over the next 2 slides here is to share what I would recommend these questions you ask yourself when you're trying to determine, is this thing I have to get done, is it a priority, or is it truly a back burner item that I can just deal with whenever I get around to it? So I took our example here, learning and development, and let's ask some of these questions, as it relates to determining, is learning and development a priority or a back burner? So I kind of look at these questions. There's 5 questions. If you answer yes to 2 or more questions, most likely you're probably dealing with a priority. So learning and development, does this support our overall organizational goals? In most cases, it probably will, because the learning and development programs you put into place are going to they're going to contribute to the overall health and skill set and career advancement of the organization. Will this improve or contribute to retention? Probably. I mean, most people who feel enriched and that they're getting value out of coming to work every day, learning, getting better at what they do, learning things that they don't really fully know today, I think people respond to that, and they have a deeper sense of employee engagement when they have the opportunity to learn. Will efficiency be an outcome? Potentially, depending upon what type of programs are put in place. Will this help to attract new talent? It can, especially if you toot your own horn and tell people, as you're recruiting, that you have, a really wonderful learning and development track put together. And will this enrich our employees and our leaders? Absolutely, yes. So we definitely had 2 or more questions that were yeses. So I would say that if learning and development is on your back burner today, this might be something that you want to you want this to be one of your first strategic priorities. You want to build that into your schedule to start spending more time on it every week, to chip away at it and get to a place where you feel like you can start rolling out pieces of these development opportunities to the organization. Second example, SOP creation. So does this support our overall organizational goals? No. Will this improve or contribute to retention? Probably not. Will efficiency be an outcome? Yeah, it will. Most likely it will, because once you have everything documented, it's easy to kind of go back through. Sometimes there's ways to kind of, once it's all written down, really kind of see, is there a better way to do this? Will this help to attract new talent? No. Will this enrich our employees and leaders? No. So we only answered yes to 1 question. So SOP creation, it belongs on the back burner. It is important. It's important in the roles that we do, but is it a priority? No, it's not. So when you're thinking about prioritizing projects that matter, and I'm not going to go through every one of these for the sake of time, but really what you want to try to do here is incorporate high impact initiatives into your annual HR strategy. So learning and development is absolutely should be one of those initiatives. So build that into your HR strategy, because remember, it really does check a lot of the boxes in terms of priority versus back burner. SOP creation, probably not going to be a high impact initiative for your HR strategy, but it could absolutely be one of those, tasks and list of items to tackle when you have the time. This will be in the slide deck for you to review some additional suggestions on how to create high impact initiatives within your HR strategy. And I just wanted to revisit this chunk and block schedule. So if we've identified that learning and development is an important strategic initiative that we want to take on because it's important to the organization, I've now repurposed some of these strategic blocks of time. You can see as indicated with the stars. I now repurpose that with some SOP creation as well as some L&D work. So SOP, we know that it's not ideal, like that we get this done immediately, but if I've got 45 minutes every Monday, maybe I can dedicate 45 minutes to SOP. And then I've got, another 2.5 hours a week that I'm dedicating to strategic project work. On Wednesday at 11 and Friday at 2:30, I'm going to work on L&D work. And maybe over the course of 3 months, I'll get there and I'll be done with all of the work that I've wanted to put into this. I'm oversimplifying. I know how complicated L&D is, but just for the sake of an example. All right. We have 4 minutes left. So I don't know if we want to even dive into the breakout session. It was just going to be another round of what we already did. So I apologize. I've talked too much and I have eaten up our time for this breakout session. But because we have 4 minutes left, why don't I zip it and allow all of you to ask questions, provide feedback, also provide some dissent. If you don't agree with me, I'd love to hear it. And hear from you if you think these are feasible recommendations, or if you feel like maybe some of it just isn't possible. I'll leave that up to all of you to provide some feedback here in our last moments. Anyone?
I think it's a great session. Really love the tools. I'm looking forward to trying out the tools, especially the calendar tools, and then some of the technology, the Grammarly and Fathom. Looking at those because I don't tend to think of technology that way. So it was kind of an eye opener, aha for me from that aspect.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Lauren, you had a question in the chat. How do you manage chunk and block on your schedule when your days are usually always booked with meetings?
So this is how we flip the script a little bit here on our strategic mindset, right? That's your schedule. That's your calendar. You get to decide how you use your time. I completely understand that there are meetings that are going to need to take place and you need to be there. So sometimes your schedule might not go exactly as you want, but you have the control to block your calendar to show I'm busy from 9 to 11, or I'm busy from 4 to 5:30. And you're well within your boundary setting to say, hey, sorry, I have to decline this meeting that you've just sent me from 4 to 4:30. I'm already tied up. I know that that's easier said than done. But I do think that if you flex that muscle a little more, even if it's just a little bit here and there, you will be able to take back some of your calendar and your schedule for you, because people are taking of your time because you're letting them. This excludes your boss, your executives, like anyone that you have to jump for. Totally, that is separate. That's different. But when I'm thinking about a peer that's trying to get your time, you can say no if you're busy, and you might be busy working on your strategic project work for L&D during that time. And I'm sorry, I'm not available at 4 today, but I am available at 9 o'clock tomorrow. So let's meet tomorrow on that. So I do think it's a little bit of boundary setting and standing your ground when you can. When you can't, I get that.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. Lauren, some fantastic tips and tools, things that I think a lot of us don't necessarily always think about, and things that as HR professionals, it is okay to set those boundaries and to say, I need space to do what I need to get done. And I think that for a lot of us, it's very hard to do. So thank you so much for all of these great ways for us to really help start setting those boundaries and to help put this strategic plan together for our HR departments. We certainly appreciate it. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day and everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody.